Hey everyone, welcome to a quick overview of the upcoming Corp IDs in Limbus Company. They are Tremor IDs just like the last event IDs, so Tremor teams keep eating pretty good. Let's start with looking at a new 2-star Vodion ID. On the first skill, we already see she gains Tremor count on use, so just like the last idea, she has Tremor count on herself as a builder spender she will use for extra clash power, so that's pretty neat. Then we gain clash power for every Tremor on the target, pretty standard conditional. Then we inflict Tremor, gain Tremor count on ourselves, and inflict Tremor count on the enemy if it was after a clash win. So yeah, with the skill 1 and 2 of her ID, you want to make sure you're actually clashing and are not in one-sided attacks. Now, looking at the skill 2, it is pretty samey to skill 1, also only 2 coins, but we see we deal more damage for every X bind on the target, and we will also inflict bind on the target, and doubly so if there's enough tremor on the target. Okay, but before we look at skill 3, where a lot of magic is happening, I would say we should look at her defense skill, Borrow Time. Combat start. If this unit is not in a borrowed time state, gain borrowed time at turn end. On use for this turn, when hit by the enemy, inflict tremor on target next turn. I mean, extra tremor if we get hit is neat, but yeah, we're using our defense skill to power up to get a borrowed time effect. You might ask, what is borrowed time? It is a self buff. If we have more than 2 count, we gain haste, clash, power up, and fragile next turn. I would kinda assume that we get a count of 3 if we use our defense skill. We will see when the idea actually releases, but that's how much the enemy got. And yeah, keep in mind we only get this if we're not in borrowed time yet, so we will not be able to get more than probably 3 count. So the first turn after we used the defensive skill, we would get 3 haste, 3 clash power, and 3 fragile from the buff. So pretty juicy. And then we would go down to 2 haste, 2 clash power up, and 2 fragile next turn. And last turn we instead would gain bind next turn, and it would just run out. One other thing to look out for is that if we gain more bind than haste next turn, the borrowed time effect immediately expires and the unit gets staggered instead. Now, if I understand everything right, this should never happen if we start with 3 count. And so that only means you need to be aware if the enemy puts bind on you, or you have anything else that would put bind on you, that you could get staggered instead. And yeah, you don't want that to happen. So now that we know what borrowed time is, we can look at a skill 3. Once again, we deal more damage for every X bind on the target, then clash power if there's enough tremor on the enemy, and we consume our tremor count to gain coin power. So it should be pretty strong attack with a lot of clash power, easy clash wins. Okay, then what do all those 4 coins do for us? We start with inflicting tremor count, and then on 2 and 3 we inflict more tremor. And now on the 4th coin, more bind next turn, then even more bind if we consume tremor count, which you should do. Then if this unit is in borrowed time state, inflict time moratorium. Now, what is time moratorium? The enemy does not receive damage, instead it all gets stored up. Why would you want to do this? Because once time moratorium runs out, it's only on 1 count. We trigger a tremor burst, and then we deal damage based on the amount of stored damage as sloth damage. So we can set up a big nuke for a specific turn, and we can also convert the damage of our whole team to sloth damage. Now, this might be a big plus, might also be a big minus. Really depends on what you're fighting, so you probably really want to only bring an ID like this to a boss fight that is weak to sloth damage, otherwise you're kinda shooting yourself into the foot. But this should be a pretty huge nuke, so it should be worth it to set it up. Might be a bit slow, since for optimal damage you want to really make sure that the count runs out and you don't refresh it with another time moratorium, since for every turn on the enemy you gain potency on that thing, and that potency multiplies the damage. So yeah, you want it to naturally run out for the optimal amount of damage, which might be minus to this 2-star ID, since Dawn will also have the same effect and you don't want to override each other. So there's a big question if you want to bring this ID, if you have the Dawn ID, especially since Vodion competes with Wolfsbanner Vodion. Now, you won't get any extra bind with Wolfsbanner Vodion, which helps the Dawn ID a lot. But Wolfsbanner Vodion has a lot more Tremor counts than she does, and with the reverb Tremor we get from Honglu, Tremor bursts are so much more worth it, since you deal so much more sloth damage. Okay. Can her passive redeem her? She has some self-heal if we're in between a specific HP threshold and we recover from stagger. Now, some self-heal, I guess, is nice. Doesn't really seem like she needs it. Recovering from stagger could be neat if you end up staggered because of borrowed time. I guess we'll see what the conditional really is and how usable it is. Then we also gain Clash Power against targets with Time Moratorium and take less damage from targets with Time Moratorium. So being able to more reliably deal damage to enemies that we want to nuke might be pretty neat. Taking less damage seems kinda worthless to me. Now, the support passive can be nice. It is some extra Clash Power if you run a Tremor team. But yeah, I don't think you would just bench her. Either you would bring 2-star Vodion, I would say, or you would bring Wolfsbanner Vodion, since she has some pretty good ecos to help this team. Since we now set up pretty huge sloth nukes, her Pursuance ego has some sloth fragility, which should really help a lot with that. Or her Clem ego does put some bind on the enemy, which would help this idea for extra damage, and it would also help our new Dawn 3-star ID. Now, what does the 3-star ID do instead of the 2-star ID? We are pretty samey, but we see we have a blue tremor on her, so there's something special here. Let's start with looking at the defense skill. And yeah, this defense skill is basically the same as borrowed time. It's another way to get into borrowed time. And we also inflict tremor if we get hit. It might be a bit more useful on her, since Dawn is gonna be a tank. She has ways to gain aggro from her skill 1 and from her passive. And yeah, maybe we gain more borrowed time count on her, but I would still say we probably just gain 3 count. We will see. Okay, then let's look at the skill 1. Also, self-tremor count as a builder spender. We can spend on our skill 3 for extra power. We give Clash Power for every tremor on the target. Pretty standard. Then, I'm not sure we've seen that before, is that on use we gain echo to the skill slot next turn, and also on hit with the first coin we gain echo to the skill slot next turn. I think so far it was always only one instance of echo. I'm not quite sure how it's gonna stack. I'm not sure there is even like a public version of how the echo calculations work. All we know is it makes it more likely that the target will hit a skill slot. So I guess a lot more likely if you have 2 instances of aggro. And if you use a passive and run out of borrowed time, you might even be able to have 3 instances of Aqua on it. I guess we'll see how this plays out. Otherwise, we just inflict some Tremor. Okay, and then skill 2. We once again gain Tremor count. Also more Clash power for Tremor on the target. Now, on the first coin, we consume the Tremor on the target and get Tremor count on ourselves instead. And for the Tremor count consumed, we put Bind on the enemy next turn. I feel like consuming Tremor shouldn't be that much of a problem, since I feel like getting potency up is relatively easy if you run a dedicated Tremor team. And you want a bind for her skill 3 and for extra damage on the 2-star Rodion, I guess. But yeah, we inflict more Tremor, and then also very nicely we have a Tremor burst on her skill 2. Now, let's come to the juicy bits once again. Skill 3, another 4 coin skill. We gain Clash power for the Tremor on the target. If there's bind on the target, we gain extra Clash power, and then we consume Tremor count to gain more coin power. So once again, just like the Rodion skill 3, we should Clash very high, probably also a lot of damage. Now, what do the coins do here? We inflicting Tremor on coin 2 and 3, and then on the 4th coin is where the meat happens once again. If the target has enough Tremor, we consume Tremor from the target and inflict Time Moratorium. What is interesting here is that we don't really have to set up Borrowed Time beforehand, so you could apply this even maybe turn 1 to start setting up the nuke. We will see, but yeah, if you have Borrowed Time on her, you do not consume the target's Tremor, so still a huge incentive to probably be in Borrowed Time beforehand and set up your nuke that way. And then we get another Tremor burst. More Tremor bursts are always great, nothing to say here. And then if the target speed is lower than this unit's, trigger amplitude conversion into Tremor chain. Now, it shouldn't be too hard to hit this conditional, since we set up a lot of bind with our other skills, especially if we ping the Rodion ID. So what is Tremor Chain? Tremor Chain is lose class power for every X Tremor potency on self. So we can reduce the clash power for the enemy. Probably really only useful on bosses in harder content. Might also be just capped off like the Tremor Chain was for the enemy that uses this in the event stages. So what it means is for every 10 Tremor, we reduce the potency. For every 10 Tremor potency, we reduce the clash power by 1 for a maximum of 3. So it shouldn't be too hard to hit the max. And having basically +3 clash power for the whole team is amazing. The question is, if you really want this Tremor instead of any of the other Tremors that increase your damage output, since I feel like the Tremor team already clashes decently and you probably rather would want the yellow Tremor, the Tremor reverb that deals extra damage every time you do Tremor burst, or like the everlasting Tremor from the Faust ego to have more Tremor bursts for each Tremor burst. So might get a bit overshadowed by the other Tremor types, but if the boss clashes high, you still love to run this, I guess. And yeah, I would say those new ideas will be pretty good against boss fights. Might not be the best against mob fights, but you can set up huge nukes their way, so I assume they will be relatively meta for boss fights. Now, I feel like Dawn doesn't have the most amazing egos to run with that idea. The only real synergy she really has is Fluid Sac, which does do Tremor bursts and also extra damage to staggered enemies, so that is nice. If you have Gloom in your Tremor team, I'm not sure if you would have it. Also, I guess her standard Saiyan ego might be knee since it does some self-heal and you're gonna be tanking with her. But yeah, I'm not fully sold on the 2-star ID, but I would say this new Dawn is amazing. And even if you don't pull her for meta, it's Dawn, very cute in armor, so she has to be top tier. But yeah, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it and gained something out of this. See you hopefully in 2 weeks once again if there's new ideas to look at. Bye bye.